All right, and we're live. So I'm gonna start this by saying that this is the first episode, so we can only really get better from here. So, welcome, Joel. For people who don't know you, who are you?
Who am I? We could be here for a while. Um, yeah, my name's Joel. I'm 30 years old. I'm from a small town called Barhead, so it's northwest of Edmonton. And before getting into real estate, which I know we'll probably be talking about a little bit today, and I was an engineer for quite a few years, working in the U.S., Israel, and Africa on a few different projects for a few years. Went to school and got my petroleum engineering degree at the University of Montana Tech. Before that, I went to school in Edmonton and then played hockey all around Alberta. So I've kind of traveled around quite a bit, moving between Canada and the US and traveling overseas a little bit for work. So now I'm full time in real estate and looking to, build a global real estate company with the right partners. And yeah, I know we're working together, Ethan, and we're pumped to have you on board, but we're putting the right pieces in place. So we're gonna start scaling here right away.
That's very exciting stuff. So why the change? What gets you from engineering to real estate?
That's a good question. Um, I'm not exactly sure. So I've always like been interested in real estate, and then I decided that I just wanted to get my license in 2020. So in 2020, I lost my job during COVID while I was working as an engineer. Our company got bought by a larger company, and then there wasn't any position for me over on a project in Israel anymore. So they ended up getting rid of my job on the Eastern Mediterranean business unit. And then I ended up moving back to Canada. And when I moved back to Canada in 2020, I told myself I was going to get my real estate license more so as something that would, be in my, my back pocket if I want to buy investment properties or just get more educated. And I was looking for engineering jobs at the time. And I landed a couple job offers, one in Calgary and one in Fort McMurray to work as an engineer for a couple different companies. And the more I dug into real estate and then the power of, where we're at now and kind of what I want to build, I decided that it's just going to, probably be a path that I wanted to go down and see what it was all about. So I declined the job offers for the engineering and just went all in on real estate. And yeah, I moved to Calgary in 2021. Never had lived there before, just packed up a suitcase, lived in a hotel for about a week and started selling real estate in a brand new city and learning the city. And then, yeah, here we are about almost 3 years later since that point where I decided that I was going to go all in.
So you were in a hotel, just this premier laptop selling homes.
Yeah, so when I moved to Calgary, I didn't have a place lined up. I just said I'm just going to drive down and see what I could find. So I just stayed in a hotel on the north side for a week or so, and then I went on Rent Faster, which is a rental board website, and I started to find bedrooms for rent. And I found a bedroom in an area called West Hillhurst. So I rented that bedroom for probably 3 months or so. And then I ended up finding an apartment and moving into that apartment for about 6 months. And then I moved again. And then for like the last 8 months, I've been kind of, back and forth, living at my parents' farm and then going back and forth to Calgary. So basically working completely remote now, between Calgary, Edmonton, and Barhead.
Amazing. So real quick before we move on, when you were in the hotel room, did you have like any mentors or anybody to help you out, or like were you just like, I'm just gonna go do real estate, and then you free soloed it, and then you just kind of found the people as you went?
Yeah, so I found people before I moved to Calgary that I wanted to, be surrounded by and work with. So I actually found them online. I drove down there once before, met them at their office, and I thought, okay, like, yeah, I'm just gonna move down and be surrounded by these guys. So I did have mentorship before I moved down. In regards to any knowing much about the city, I didn't really know too much. I lived in Okotoks, which is just south of Calgary when I was in high school, but I didn't venture into Calgary too often. I could only name a handful of areas. So the city was brand new and the real estate environment was brand new, but I had people that had been in real estate in Calgary a long time that were, helping me get started.
And and were they the ones that said, "Hey, you can sell real estate remotely," or was that something why you figured out that why you moved away from engineering? Because it sounds like real estate was a backup plan to a plan A that just eventually you're like, held on, real estate might just be the one. Did you always know that you could do it remotely, or did you just kind of learn that as you went?
Yeah, definitely learned as I went. I never expected that to be the case when I first went down. I thought it was all about like door knocking and handing out flyers. Like I remember my first week in real estate, I went and bought a printer and a bunch of paper and I made flyers. And I look back on the flyers now, I had all the dates wrong. I wasn't even in the wrong year. I was in the wrong year. So I was handing out flyers that were like technically for stats a year before. I was laughing at that when I seen that. But yeah, I was knocking on doors and handing out flyers, thinking that was the only way to go. And yeah, a lot has changed in 3 years on how you can conduct your whole business. So definitely learned it as I went, and then just adapted accordingly.
Okay, and then it was just like a thought that came into your head. You're like, hold on, I can do this remotely. Like, how does that work?
Yeah,
How do
so
you
I
do it?
think the the one thing that shifted me to get to that point was I was working with somebody. His name was Hassan. So he's a real estate agent in Calgary, and he really liked showing houses and driving around and opening the doors and meeting with people. Whereas I was more like, how could we find more people on the back end and get more people in the pipeline and help more people. So I love the lead generation, the hunting for people, the systems on the back end trying to get more clients in the door, whereas he loves servicing the clients. So what we did is when we created a partnership is my job was strictly from finding the client, getting them all the way up to the point where they wanted to go view the home, and then after they wanted to view the home, I would then hand them off to Hassan, which would then take over. So one thing that I quickly realized is every agent needs new clients. Most of them, they're struggling to find clients, but I was really good at finding clients. It was almost like the hunt that I loved. Like I loved waking up trying to find people that we could go out and help. And through paid advertisement, I got good at that. Through organic advertisement to just like building up trust with people really quick. And then I would set the expectation with them that I had a business partner that was basically like a buyer's agent that would take them on the showing tours.
Mm.
So we did a lot of transactions that way, and I was like, I never even had to leave my condo, right? He would show the homes. I would just be sitting in my condo, and we'd be selling a lot of houses. I was like, okay, well, if we can do this in Calgary, why can't we do this in other places? And part of the reason why we got to that point was I was kind of struggling with some stomach problems, so it kind of wouldn't allow me to leave the condo sometimes. So some days I would be, down and not feeling too great. So by having somebody that could go out there and drive around for like hours and hours around Calgary. So I had to start thinking, how can I become more efficient and create leverage, but also have a win-win scenario for somebody else in real estate. So if the other agent who's the buyer agent for me is going to win because I'm giving them a client, and I'm also going to win because I can, find more people and hand them off to other buyers agents, I just created a scalable business model. And that's kind of where I'm at today is I have buyers agents or people that show houses. And then when they sell a property, they transfer me, or I have the referral agreement where the money goes directly into my account from a referral. And I, didn't even show houses. So it was kind of like a ever expanding way to get there. And then once we did it in Calgary, I was like, why can't we go other places? So that's where we started migrating out to helping people across Canada, the US, Mexico, Belize, create similar business models.
Amazing. So it's almost like the when you're having those stomach challenges, it's like you found like an opportunity within that. So if you didn't have that challenge, you would have never thought of the opportunity to think outside the box and expand your mind.
Yeah, honestly, that's probably one of the main reasons that led me down this path was I had to think differently, just because not every day was the same where I could run around and show houses all the time. So I needed to find other ways to drive income. But I've always been like, how can we do something a little bit more efficient, or how can we do something with a little bit more scalability on more of a macro stage too, and instead of just like being like, I'm going to farm one neighborhood on a micro stage. So I started to think more macro, and then that's where it was like, okay, if I have one person that's helping me sell houses, why can't I get 10 and just up the lead volume and up the scalability of it? And if we can do it in Calgary, why can't we bring on like, agents right now, like we're bringing on in Edmonton, for example, or why can't we build a team in Utah or Texas or Florida, and help them create the same business model? That's basically where we are today, right?
Amazing. And for people who want to start selling uh, real estate remotely, where do they find people like Hassan and or Hassan and all these different people like to help them out that really enjoy that piece, and like how can they get involved and get started in that?
Yeah, so I think you need to be very specific on who you target to help you. They need to be experienced. If they're not experienced, you have to personally know that they're going to do a good job from maybe other past experiences outside of real estate. But I'm quite critical on who I use now, because if I hand off a client or somebody, or some cold lead that I've got to somebody that doesn't understand how to write a purchase contract, or doesn't understand the exact flow of how a transaction works, then it's going to reflect badly on me, right? Because I
Yeah.
set that expectation from the beginning. So I need somebody that really understands it. So you have to interview, you have to do basically a background check on them, and then maybe do like a trial run. I've sent leads to people before, or clients, and they didn't deliver, and sorry, but there, that was your one chance. Like, you're kind of cut off, right? I don't give second chances. Um, Usually if they do a bad job on the first time, right?
Mm. And why is that? Like, I mean, or like in the sense of like this, do they have to like royally mess it up before, or is there some situations where they'll be like, there's not really much you can do there, and then it's like, I mean, everything's situational, but like, what's the kind of indicator? How do you know?
Usually client feedback. If I talk to the client during the transaction again, or post sale, and ask them how it went, you can usually tell. Or just from a standpoint of, if you have an example would be, if you have a referral agreement with somebody and you say, hey, you owe me 25%, and the money comes and they don't pay you 25% when the deal closes, that's a first sign that that's not somebody I'll want to work with, because they didn't hold up their end of the deal, right? So
Right.
you got to make sure you obviously have paperwork before the deal. But if there's any sort of back and forth about the payment or anything like that when it comes to that referral agreement, or what you're owed, or you have to ask for the referral agreement, or there's any delay in that front, I want somebody that's going to be like, yeah, boom, there's your referral agreement. I'm actually writing an offer, complete trust, complete transparency on where that person's at. If you sense anything like, yeah, they're kind of delaying it, maybe they're trying to cut me out of the deal. I'm not saying anybody's done that, but if you sense anything like that, well, then you just got to move on and find better agents. So that's more on a micro scale if you're expanding to other cities, right?
That's true. Well, I guess that also kind of comes as a leader as well, as like you have to find the right people, and it's your job to interview them and understand like what you're actually looking for, the values and the characteristics and the things that make them into who they are. And what are some of those things? Because like, I mean, there's different ways to do it, right? I feel like a lot of modern day jobs now, like they have a resume and you go to this school and you go to that school and they do that. But in terms of the the values and the traits that some of these agents have, what separates the good ones from the great ones?
Communication. That would be one of the first ones, right? So how do they communicate? Are they good on the phone, right? That's one thing I know. When we first met, it was like, are you good on the phone, and can you actually talk to people, and can you get your message across? So that's definitely the first one. Um, Basically it's just like likability. Like, are they a likable person, or do they come
Mhm.
across like they're a little bit arrogant, or have a little bit of an ego? If you sense any of that, it's got to go. So it's more of an upbeat. Are they good with people? Are they good? Do they have good communication skills? Do they follow up? How do they conduct themselves? Are they on time? That's one thing that bothers me a lot, is when people are consistently late. Um, but there's some work around that if they're still doing a good job and they have the odd time that they were late. But if they're consistently late, and they're not really respecting other people's time, that's one thing that's a no-go for me. So yeah, I think if you can hang around the person and you actually like being around them, that's a big thing too, right? It's like, could I actually hang out with this person, or am I just like trying to like make it through another day like working with them? So
And yeah, no, I totally agree with that. For the so what does your schedule look like on a daily basis? You get out of bed, but then what happens?
every day is different. So we have support calls like 7 days a week. So I'll take the support calls. Right now is it's a lot about just like building the community on the back end. So I still sell a little bit of real estate, not much lately, but I'll schedule that into my day if I have to do client follow up, or look over any purchase contracts. And then yeah, like the support calls, like I mentioned, I think we have 7 a week, so that's 7 hours of support calls. A lot of Zoom calls with people that are interested in joining us. So I'll have people from all over Canada, the US that'll want to book calls with us and talk about, what are we building and how can they get involved. Our group's a bit different. We actually interview and we actually make sure that person's a good fit before they join. So I do the welcome and the intro calls when somebody joins, and I do even the calls to screen them before they even get access to our group. So I do a lot of those different calls. Then also helping on, our marketing company, if there's client follow-ups or ideas there. And then a lot of mentorship, to be honest. So I have my phone beeps quite a bit with people asking me questions. When you have like 35 or 40 agents that are funneling up to you right now, they're one-off reaching out to you quite often, right? So it only takes one person reaching out every couple of days for that to add up. So I get a lot of messages, one-off messages saying, hey, Joel, like, how would you do this? Or, hey, Joel, can you review this purchase contract for me? Or, hey, Joel, can we hop on a quick Zoom and go over something? So it's a lot of me basically supporting them with one-off questions outside of the support calls. So we're trying to create efficiency from less one-on-one calls and more into a group setting. But I still offer everybody that they're able to book a one-on-one when needed. So
And
a
you,
lot of
you
Zoom, a lot of Zoom.
I know it's crazy. And Zoom never. I don't know if Zoom ever would have got big if it wasn't for COVID.
Yeah, I know it really helped. I wish I would have owned I don't know what the stock price is today, but I wish I would have bought 4 or 5 years ago.
Are you a big investor?
Yeah, I do. I have a stock portfolio. Yeah. Not saying I'm an expert, but I know how it works.
Yeah. This is not financial advice, but this is what I
No.
do. Type of deal.
Yeah, exactly.
And you also invest in real estate.
Correct. Yeah. So I have a couple of rental properties and then another investment that I bought into. I'm just waiting for that one to close, and then I just started really buying real estate 2 years ago because I was living in the US and I was mainly just more into the stock side of things, buying stocks and investing in the stock market. And you have the company 401k and the IRA in the US, which is basically like an RRSP in Canada, or a TFSA, a tax-free savings account. So I was more into that, working as an engineer. And then when I got into real estate, I was like, oh yeah, I need to figure out how I could, start building a rental portfolio.
You also worked in Mexico too, right?
Worked in Mexico. No, I didn't
Worked
work
in
in
Mexico.
Mexico. No, not directly. As an engineer, you mean? Or in real estate?
So sorry, as real estate, weren't you selling homes from Mexico for a period of time?
Oh yeah. So yeah, well, I just went to Mexico and then was able to work from my laptop. So that's kind of the cool part about this, is that you can literally be anywhere,
Yep.
as long as you have the right pieces in place. So if I have a laptop, internet, and my webcam, I guess, to make the image a little bit better, I'm basically set. Um, and then from there, yeah, we're also helping a developer in Mexico right now sell a project. So we have beachfront condos that we're marketing for them as our marketing side of things, and sounds like they're quite happy and they're getting some sales out of it through their brokerage. So it's going good there.
And then for the marketing side of things, I remember you telling the story about, like, what can you can elaborate on this if you're open to it. But
Mhm.
the story with your mentor, and how, like, he had like these two guys that you're like, hold on, I need to find my two guys version of that.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was kind of like a light bulb moment. I went over to his house. And I was always asking him, I was like, hey, how do you actually make your income? Because you're not really selling many houses anymore. And he said, oh, just follow me, like follow my footsteps. I'll teach you, like, kind of exactly what I do. Basically said he'll take me under his wing. And then he invited me over to his house one night, and there was a couple other people there, and they were all in the digital marketing space. I think there was 3 people there that night, or 4 people there that night. They were in the digital marketing space, and they were talking about, like, building, funnels and video sales letters, and scaling new offers, and selling online. And then they were talking about, like, Stripe, and I don't even know what any of this meant, right? And they're like,
Yeah.
oh, taking payments through all this, and go high level. And I was just like, what is this stuff? So I started to dig in and ask some questions that night. I was like, what do you guys actually do? Like, and they were selling online digital products. So basically products to real estate agents to help them scale their business. So YouTube courses, webinar courses, lead generation courses, things that they had used in the past that have worked really well. They turned it into an offer, and then they scaled that offer. And I remember the one guy, he was showing me his Stripe account. It was like, one of the products was doing over 100 grand US a month. The other one was doing over 100. It was like about 300 grand a month they were doing from 3 digital offers. And I was like, 300 grand a month. Like you know how much real estate you have to sell to do 300,000 a month? So that was kind of the light bulb moment when I was like, okay, maybe we need to get into more of the online space and learn the back end on, you know, how you create an offer and how the marketing works. So it's not all about money, but it was very intriguing when they showed the money, because it also led to the fact where it's like, okay, this can be done completely remote, right? Like I don't need to be in Calgary all the time anymore, because they're strictly working from their laptops. So that was the night where my mind just kind of started to go, okay, there's another way to do this instead of showing houses and just building teams locally.
And you talk a lot about how like people and everything, and like you have to find the right pieces and kind of how things click. And so where did you find like, because you have two other business partners?
Yeah. Yeah. So to touch more on that question, so I knew the guy that's, you know, been a mentor for me for the last 3 years. He had two guys in his back corner. These two guys are, you know, very good at digital marketing and scaling different online businesses. And so I was like, okay, that's the first step. I need to find guys that know how to do that. So what I did is in January of last year is I paid to get into a mastermind program out of Vancouver. Even before I met my business partners now, but I paid to get in this mastermind, and I was going to learn how to do it myself, because I like to learn how things work. And then once I learned it, I was going to find people that could help me implement it. So I paid to get in this mastermind to learn about marketing, the online space, creating offers, funnels, you know, everything like that, and marketing for real estate. And then I ended up stumbling across a guy that I used to play hockey with about 12 years ago, or 11 or 12 years ago. His name's Josh, and he kind of showed me what he was doing, and he was in the online space, and he, you know, did marketing in university and has been running a marketing company. And then we started talking a little bit more. He's like, oh, I actually have another business partner. His name's Kevin. I want you to meet Kevin. And then, you know, I met Kevin, and then we just decided that, you know, I kind of shared like what my vision was and like what their vision was. And then we kind of just came together. And we started working together probably, you know, a little over a year ago, like kind of more full time. And then now, you know, Josh is licensed as well. So he's kind of seen the vision from the real estate side. He ended up getting his license. And then Kevin is basically like our right hand man. He's not licensed, but he's, you know, just as much a part of it. So he helps on the front from the real estate side too, plus the marketing side.
Amazing. Now, touching back, this is going back a little bit. We talk about how obviously, like, right, it's not all about money and like that kind of thing. However, what I find is that in at least in the game of business, in the pursuit of trying to acquire something that you no longer have, I think in the process you become better. So I think like in the pursuit of whatever, I mean, it doesn't have to be money, but whatever goal that you have, inevitably you become better in the process. And I think that's something that you can always have is like, because your character, it's like it's your reputation, it's all of these different things that kind of play into that. And I guess where I'm going with this is like, what was kind of like we see like the version of you now, and we still have like a long way to go into the future. But what was like that kind of like, was there like a life defining thing in your life? Did you like, I know you do like the Wim Hof breathing and like the biohacking, like that kind of thing. Did like one of these things like just click into your mindset, or was it just like like what series of events led to right here?
Um, that's a good question. Well, the first one would be me losing my job in Houston, Texas. So that would be the biggest changing event, because I can guarantee that if I didn't lose my job, I would most likely still be in Houston or another city in the US, working as an engineer. So losing my job was definitely the biggest shift that led to getting into real estate. And then the shifts that led to thinking bigger on a bigger scale was joining a company that allows us to go into multiple countries. So the brokerage I'm at allows us to go into over 20 some countries and scale. So that was also another, you know, ticking point where I was like, okay, wow, like this is really cool. So I'd interviewed like a bunch of different brokerages and different teams before getting into real estate. And they were all basically the same until I found this one company and I started doing research on them. I even had some people think I was getting into like a pyramid scheme, and like they were worried that I was getting into this company that was globally, and I knew the potential of it. I was like, I could look under the hood, you know, do a lot of research on it. I'd researched it for months, to make sure I wasn't getting into anything that was like a little bit off because it was a little bit newer in Alberta and in Canada at the time. But my guess was right back then that it was going to blow up, and now it's blown up, and it's the biggest brokerage in Alberta, and it's the one of the fastest growing in the whole world with almost 100,000 agents. So, the decision I made 3 years ago to take a chance on kind of like a newer company in Alberta where there wasn't many people, led to us being able to do this. So sometimes you just got to follow your gut, and if it seems like a good decision, regardless of whatever other people say, you just kind of got to go for it.
Absolutely, you gotta trust that intuition. I'm trying to think of a question here. So you talk about how I literally I just lost it.
Ask anything, man.
Okay. Well, I'm sure it'll come back. So, Wim Hof breathing. You sent me a video on that. Is that something you do daily? What is that?
Yeah, so if you look it up, it's just basically inhale like 30 rounds, or 3 rounds of 30 in and out on breaths, and it basically just brings a sense of calmness across yourself, and it basically brings your body into a different state, because you're making your body very oxygen rich. So it really helps. I do it because I've done a lot of research on it for health issues that I have. And a lot of people have been doing it to, get rid of autoimmune diseases, which is something that I have. So basically, I incorporated that into my routine. I don't do it every day. I'm not going to say I'm like completely religious on it, where if I miss it, my day's thrown off. I'll mix it every now and then. But one thing I do quite often is cold showers, which seems to help as well. So that kind of calms me down and kind of brings another state of calmness across my body. So those are kind of two things that I do.
Absolutely. My favorite thing about cold exposure as well is that I mean, in a metaphorical sense, it's like if you can control your internal thoughts when your external circumstances are unfavorable to you, then I think you have total control over your mind.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's like I know you're into like the Goggins or like the Jocko or the guys that do hard things, and life will get easier, right? So
Yeah,
nobody likes climbing in cold water. Like, it's not fun, but it just changes like your mental perspective on that you can do things that you don't want to do, regardless of the circumstances, and then you're able to overcome it. But that's kind of a metaphor for life, right? There's going to be things that are thrown at you that are hard, and you just got to try to figure it out, because nobody's going to do it for you, right?
that's very true. And now I used to be very close-minded, and I'm not sure like your experience with this, but like you seem like a very open-minded person. It's like how do you kind of find yourself like that? Because going back to what we were saying before about like looking under the hood and doing your own research is humans in general, for the most part, we fear what we don't understand. And so if we don't understand something, instead of researching it, instead of trying to learn more, or at least just being like, okay, I can see why this person might do it because it obviously benefits them in some way. A lot of times we dismiss it, or we like think that other person is crazy, or like all these different things. So like, what 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 led to that like kind of like open mind where you do the research and you sit down instead of just being like, oh, that's nuts, I'm not even gonna consider that. Is it like an intuitive thing that you're like, maybe this is something I need to learn more about?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's probably I'm extremely analytical. Like, I think a lot. I think that has to go back to my engineering background, where when you're doing engineering problems, right? They're not the easiest. I think engineering is considered potentially the hardest degree to obtain, from a standpoint of problem solving and figuring things out when you go. So when you go through 4 years of problem solving and figuring out issues, and then you get into a larger scale engineering job where you're put into situations where you're working not on $1 million projects, you're working on multi-billion-dollar projects, and if you screw up, somebody dies. To be transparent, so there's no room for error when you're designing a facility offshore, right? Or
Right.
when you're designing oil and gas wells, there's no room for error. So you need to look at every possible outcome that could happen. You need to look at what would go wrong if we did this, or what would go wrong if we did that. So I think that's what led to the analytical approach, where you have to take in all situations into account, and then find the situation that's going to de-risk everything, right? And take away all of the unnecessary risks, and make sure we have safety measures in place and backup plans in place. So when I got into real estate, I was like, I think I still had that mindset a bit, is where I needed to analyze everything. Now that could be good, but that could also be really bad, because if you think too much, you never take action either, right? And that was
Yes.
kind of a problem where I still think a lot, but I take action a lot more now, and it has to be less perfect. It used to always have to be perfect. Um, Everything, all the situation had to be ideal for me to get started. Whereas I'm more so now, it needs to be less ideal. I do my quick, background check and my research, and then it's like, okay, now we just got to take action. And my risk tolerance is quite high. Like I'm willing to, put money on the line. I'm willing to, basically, go into the red, because I can see the longer term outcome. Because I think it comes back to an internal belief, like you just know, it's going to happen because you're in charge, right? So
Yes.
you're willing to take that risk, and if you're willing to take that risk, you're basically just betting on yourself, right?
That's very true. Like absolutely. It's like if you can, if you go all in on yourself, it's the one game that you can guarantee that you can always beat the house. That's like in the casino, it's like always like 50-50, like best odds are like 51-49, even in your favor on like blackjack or something. But in life, if you just keep investing in yourself on a long enough time horizon, you can always beat the house.
Yeah, I think, and that's a nice part about real estate and going down this path, is like, um, your input is directly correlated to your output, right?
Mhm.
When you're working for a large company, you could take a few days off and not do much work, but you're still going to have your 6-figure salary income coming in. Now, obviously, you can't do that forever. You're not going to have a job, but there's a lenient approach. Whereas when you are the one that's in charge of everything, you know that if you don't perform, you don't ever get compensated, right? Or you don't ever bring any value. People pay for value, and they pay for, the skill set you can bring them. But if you're never, learning new skills, or you never bring any value to the table, you're not going to get any compensation in return. So that's the biggest thing when you go into the self-employment world, is it's you versus you. And if you want to take a month off, great, but don't expect to, make the same as last month, or, have the same reward.
Well, what would you say to somebody who's looking to make that jump and go all in on themselves and maybe whether it's a real estate space or other some form of uh, self endeavor, whatever that might be. Like, what would you say to them in that regard?
Don't have asset. Like, if you're gonna do it, you might as well go for it. I know some people, when they get into real estate, they come in part time. Now, if you don't have any savings or an emergency fund or anything, yeah, you're going to need some sort of income, because there is a period where, there's going to be delayed gratification from the time you get your first client to the first deal closes. But if you have a little bit of savings, or you have enough to get by for, a few months, I would recommend going all in, finding people that have done what you want to do and what you want to build, getting surrounded by them. I think that's one of the biggest mistakes people make when they get into real estate, is they don't find people that have done it before. They don't find people that have found success, and they just jump in and they try to do it all on their own, and they have no idea what they're doing. I would definitely say you have to join a group, or, find a partner or some sort of team, and just like basically shadow them for, a year, 2 years, maybe longer if needed, but it's only going to take 1 or 2 years to basically understand their processes, is how they think. And then from there, then you could think about going solo. So if you want to go solo off the beginning, you better be built different, which I know some people are, but most people, I would recommend to find that mentorship right away, and then go all in with them.
Absolutely. I think adding to what you're saying, well, like finding the right mentors and everything like that. That's one thing. I mean, I used to have that mentality of like the lone wolf, or it's like that because like I think there's a certain, I think there's two things that you two play areas that you grow. You have like your own little journey of like yourself, where it's like these are the things that I must do, and then you need a team. But I think what happens is what I used to do is like when you think you have the right team or when you have all the right pieces in place, you still have to be the one to do it. We've all heard that saying of You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. But because a billionaire could give you their entire blueprint on how to make $1 billion. But if you don't actually go forward and take action, then you're never going to achieve it.
Mm-hmm. No, it's so true. And I think that's where there's a quote by Tony Robbins. It's not a lack of resources, it's a lack of resourcefulness why most people fail. Um, Not probably a little bit different, the wording on that, but basically what it means is that people aren't willing to go out and find the information. The information is out there, but they're just too lazy to go find it, how things work. They want everything just basically handed over to them. So I definitely like that one, because I think even in real estate, there's like everything that everybody knows is out there on how to do things. Like if you're willing to, take a course on marketing or paid lead gen or Google ads or Facebook ads, or you can just go on YouTube and it's free. There's so much free information out there. People aren't willing to do that. They'd rather pay somebody to do it for them, which is fine, because I think there's a lot of ways to create efficiencies that way and scalability by outsourcing. But the biggest thing that, that'll bother me is when people say, oh, I don't know how to do that, or I can't do that, or whatever. It's like there's so many things out there that you can learn for free, or you can pay. I'm a believer in the last year or two is like pay for speed. So I would rather pay for something and learn it 10 times faster than sit around and struggle and try to figure it out on my own. So I'd rather pay a mentor or pay some sort of, somebody that's done what I want to do in order to get there faster, just to get in that room with them, if that makes sense. So I'm a big believer in mentorship now.
I think that also kind of ties back to going all in, because if you're truly all in, you'll find a way to figure it out, and you'll find a way to continually push forward. Because I know Tony Robbins talks about that of like, burning the boats, because if you were forced to die or succeed, you're most likely going to succeed because you don't want to die. But and they talk about burning the boats. Are you aware of where that comes from?
Burning the boats. I know what it means. I don't know exactly where it originated from, but there's no turning back, right?
Yeah. So, from my understanding, I don't know if this is where it originated from, but this is what I do know. It is said. I mean, it's so long ago, so it's like, who knows the facts and everything like that. So it might be warped. But a long time ago, when the Spartans were back in Greece, and they were like kind of like going out and conquering and things like that. Number one, they would only hang around with warriors, kind of like what you're saying. Like you need a team of very strong people that like band together and can go forward no matter what. But what they would do is when they would land on like an island or whatever they wanted to take over and like conquer, they would burn their boats, because their philosophy was if they have no retreat to go back home, then they're forced to fight forward and go home on the enemy's boats. So that was their philosophy.
Nice.
Just like there's no turning back.
Yeah, all in. But yeah, I think that's what most people need to do. And one thing that I've definitely struggled with is I want to do multiple different things at once. I want to, I see something and I'm like, oh, that's exciting. Maybe I should give that a try. Or, that's happened before in the past where you get sidetracked from something that you should go all in on. So I'm trying to get better at that as well, right? When you do find that one thing that's working, is like try to limit the distractions. So I think a lot of people have too many distractions going on in their life. Too many outside, things that are like shiny object syndrome, like, oh, there's a squirrel, like, boom, I should go try that. Whereas if they just stuck with one thing, if they want to be really good at selling real estate, for example, maybe don't start 6 other side hustles when you're trying to become a good real estate agent.
Absolutely. Amazing. Fine, unless you have anything else that you want to add, I think that's good for now.
That was great. I think
Awesome.
one thing I'll add to people is if they ever listen to this or see this is always ask yourself, how can you create more leverage in your life and become more efficient? So that's a question I ask myself all the time is who can do this job faster and better than me and create a win-win out of it. So that's one question that I'll help everybody scale.
Amazing. All right. Well, thank you so much, Joel, for being here. And I'm sure this won't be the last time.
Okay, thanks, bud.